this car barely needs any introduction, because for most of history, this car has, and is always gonna be, the best front-wheel drive hot hatch in the world. So, how do you build on success? Well, you just simply build upon it and make it better than ever. And that's exactly what Honda did with the new Civic Type R. It's not gonna reinvent the front-wheel drive hot hatch, because if you're already the best, the toughest competition you'll ever face is simply yourself. The FK8 already set a high benchmark among front-wheel drive hot hatches, and this is even more well-tuned, well-cohesive. That's the thing, it's cohesive. It's very intuitive to drive this car. So the steering wheel, ang ganda ng steering wheel niya, it's wonderful. You can really tell even the pressure that's into the front tires as you're going through like yung mga undulations or yung mga varying terrain. Speaking of the steering, I think this car has a more stronger tendency to torque steer, and so necessarily mas pangit yung steering niya as a result of that. Pero I think it's more of the part na it's also due to the engine, because itong engine ito sa totoo lang is a lot more tenacious in terms of how it delivers its power. So yes, it's still linear, it's still very tractable, but I think mas ferocious ngayon ang power delivery niya, which results in that increased amount of torque steer nga, or increased tendency rather to torque steer compared to the previous generation model. Sheesh! That chassis rotation is beautiful, and it's ganda nung kapit, I swear. The limited slip difference is doing so well in shuffling the power left and right. And this car is in R mode ngayon, so ang sobrang tindi nung pag-flatten nung kanyang body, ang tindi nung suspension, and sa ngayon the roads are smooth, pero later pag medyo pumangit yung kalsada, I'm gonna put the car in individual because I already set my settings based on what I want from the car, like most of the R mode stuff, but except for the suspension basically. So I'm gonna put the car in individual mode na because the roads aren't that smooth. But anyway, yun nga, and this 2-liter VTEC turbo engine just feels so good because of that wide torque band na meron siya. And you don't need to basically drive this car nang lagi mo siyang mag-downshift. So totoo lang, because of having so much torque at that broad RPM, kahit nga you overtake at third, it's possible. Not the best solution, but it's possible because of so much torque that's available. And then there's of course this car's 6-speed manual, which is one of the best in the industry. It's one of the best indeed, one of the best 6-speed manuals talaga in the world. I think alongside yung mga 6-speed manuals ng Mazda MX-5 and my ultimate dream car, yung Porsche 911. And there's also the chassis balance itself. It's even the chassis communicatively, apart from the steering, just almost hydraulic-like in terms of feeling. Even the chassis feels really good. Ang gandang solidity niya, no rigidity, and even the way it communicates yung kanyang rotation nga niya when you adjust your throttle. And that's the thing with the Type R. It's one of those cars that, yes, it's a front-wheel drive hot hatch, but unlike a lot of hot hatches where they try their best to remove the part that their front-wheel drive hot hatches, yung kanilang layout ng drivetrain, Honda embraces it so well. Like, it's really embracing its front-wheel drive, and here we are telling the world that we can make one of the best front-wheel drive cars in the planet. It's just really so good. Compared to the previous FK8, the new FL5 looks a lot tamer, which, in my opinion, also means a cleaner aesthetic that harks back to Honda's past. Oh, and the best part about this is the fact that the front and rear fenders, along with the rear doors, are unique to the Type R. Therefore, creating a fake Type R is gonna be a lot more difficult. Other design highlights include those 19-inch wheels, the strong and fade-resistant Brembo brake calipers, and a large but functional rear wing that's mounted on a solid aluminum stand. Now, as for the interior, here in the inside naman, the Civic Type R is pretty much like the normal Civic pa rin. So that's mostly a good thing kasi the practicality is still maintained basically. So you have a lot of storage, a lot of space front and rear, as you're gonna see later. Then you also have yung the typical features that you would find in the Civic RS then, like the wireless charging, the wireless Apple CarPlay and Android Auto, the user-friendly 9-inch infotainment. They're pretty much the same. Pinagkaiba mo lang, you have the Honda Log R software for the driver information stuff. And then down here center console, you have this silver trim piece which contains a manual gear lever, of course being the Type R, wala kang automatic dito, and the drive mode selector which now contains a plus R button. So with the plus R mode, it puts the car in a stiffer setting sa kanyang suspension, and the steering profile, yung kanyang heaviness ng steering, is already pretty heavy for an electric power steering, yung Type R na steering ngayon, no? By default. Put it in plus R mode, it becomes even heavier, almost hydraulic steering like yung kanyang bigat. And other profiles that the plus R mode changes is also the suspension, which puts it in a stiffer setting. So I'd rather put the car in individual mode, because if it's in individual mode, you're able to adjust settings that's based talaga on what you want. So if you want the stiffer steering, more aggressive sound of the engine, which is by the way piped-in engine noise lang yun, kung naka plus R mode siya or individual. But if you want the comfort suspension pa rin, but everything else is in plus R, that's basically what the individual setting is for. Then apart from that, you're gonna see these lovely red bucket seats, which are of course in suede. Then in the back, it's only applicable for 2 people nga lang, as opposed to 3 for the normal Civic. And actually, yeah, this Civic Type R sa totoo lang meant to be driven, and so let's actually start driving this car ngayon. Now that we've just entered the highway, this is now a good time for me to talk about how the Civic Type R feels like on a daily basis. Like it's a Civic. You can unleash it and make it drive like an animal, yet at the same time, it's inherently still a Honda Civic. Yun yung point eh. It's still a Honda Civic, and therefore, you kinda expect it to do Honda Civic things pa rin. And yeah, we're just cruising at 100. It's a perfectly relaxing car with its nice steering that's well calibrated for both driving on twisties and here in long straights, because yun nga, because of the heavy part nga rin ng steering niya, you don't do a lot of steering corrections, and put it in comfort mode and the steering ratio slackens off, so just basically feels like a relaxing long distance cruiser. Though in order for a car to be relaxing, you of course have to talk about NVH, and so totoo lang, as you've seen in my BRV review rin, and just even the normal Honda Civic review, yung road and wind noise ng mga Hondas, I think, nowadays are, though they've improved compared to their previous models, but compared to every other brand, I think they have the most road and wind noise at this point. I do think that there's a lot more tire noise here compared to the normal Civic, probably because of the wideness of tires, being low profile tires at the same time. And syempre, since these are tires that are meant for grip, I'm not gonna be surprised in terms of that aspect. So if you were to compare this to a Mazda 3 or Toyota Corolla na non-hot hatches naman nga lang, of course, kasi walang hot hatch yung mga models nung coaching yun in the Philippines, this is on the noisier side of things pagdating sa NVH, na totoo lang. The suspension's also pretty good. Yun yung lagi ko sabi sa Honda Civic Type R. The suspension is pretty good. Yun nga lang though, if I were being honest, yung kanyang shorter travel suspension, as you would notice, I think that this car feels more unsettled pagdating sa mga bumps, because it's due to the shorter travel ng suspension. It reduces the amount of absorption that the suspension can handle when going through bigger bumps. The upside to it is, especially if you're on track, lalo kung may undulations yung track, yung mga dips and all that, mas bawas yung vertical movements mo. But yun nga, compared to the FK8, the previous FK8 felt more composed through bad roads and stuff compared to this newer generation model. Not to a point that it's uncomfortable for me. Okay pa rin siya, especially for a hot hatch with this much performance and especially this much handling tenaciousness. And then lastly, of course, being a car for everyday use, we have to talk about the fuel economy. And it's actually pretty good. So sa ngayon, talagang I have been hammering this car so far, so I haven't really driven it that docile. So currently we're doing 6.6 kilometers per liter. Not that good. Pero this is fuel economy na based on itong reason ko nga na talagang yun nga, I've really been hammering this car. Pero right now on the highway, at sa kanyang real-time fuel economy indicator, I'm currently doing an average of 15 to 18. It's pretty good. Maganda yung fuel economy on that regard. Yung Civic Type R dati, the FK8 under my hands in a week's worth of use, average at mga 10 to 11 kilometers per liter. So I'm expecting then this Civic Type R to be the same then at the same time. And then what this Type R also has right now is what you call Honda Sensing. So yes, a hot hatch has even gotten a suite of advanced driver assistance systems, and it's the full suite, by the way, from adaptive cruise control, automatic emergency braking, lane departure warning, even lane centering. Though yung adaptive cruise control niya is syempre being a manual car won't work in stop and go traffic, and whenever you do a gear change and step on the clutch, it will deactivate the radar, or rather the forward facing camera. Wala nga plang radar ang Honda Sensing for the adaptive cruise control. And then there's also blind spot warning and rear cross traffic alert, which is actually quite surprising, to be honest, because yung Civic RS, the normal Honda Civic, has a lane watch camera, which sa totoo lang, I used to be a fan of until I realized na because it's displaying the image sa main infotainment, I find it actually a bit more distracting instead of just looking at the mirrors, which we're syempre used to. So I'm surprised sa buti na nga lang Honda actually did use blind spot warning radar sensors for the Civic Type R as opposed to just the lane watch camera. So yeah, that's really the thing with the Type R. It's a car with such a strong breadth of capabilities. Yet at the same time, it's also a car that's docile and very usable on a daily basis and very practical. So, the FL5 Type R isn't exactly rewriting the hot hatch rulebook. But then again, there's no need for Honda's engineers to do such a thing. By incrementally building upon a successful formula, the Type R is once again the fastest front-wheel drive car around the famous Nürburgring racetrack. Basically proof that the Type R can still learn a few new tricks. But at nearly 4 million pesos, the Type R is also more expensive than ever. Yet even at that price, I also think it's still worth it. Thanks to the car's better track capability, yet still practical and usable on a daily basis, the Type R is simply unlike anything else at its price point.